Hello. Welcome to this week's Wednesday workshop, where we're following our way through yoga for the creative soul. Chapter 9, in part 2, the 5 paths to your creative self, to your self-discovery, true self, self-realization, enlightenment, if you prefer. Feel welcome to scrub the video to the parts that are most compelling to you, pause when we're doing the activities, and enjoy in your own way. Today, we're working through the activities on pages 133 through 135. So we're talking about the Gyan path of yoga, the path of the science, inquiry, intellect, thinking. And we're using the analogy of a butterfly, the life cycle of a butterfly, to play with our cognitive, intellectual approaches to our enlightenment, self-realization, creative journeys. Today, as we gather, these 5 paths of yoga are drawn from the ancient tradition of yoga that comes to us from India. And the 4 paths are discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. And the 5th path, which we're talking about next, I think, very controversial. We'll talk more about that and where it comes from in a few weeks. But today, we're focusing on self-care and indulgence. Self-care and indulgence. Coming to you here from the traditional lands alongside the Grand River. These lands have been protected by peoples recorded and unrecorded since the ice receded, and the ancient caregivers were the neutral people, the Anishnawbe and the Haudenosaunee. We ourselves now, the caregivers of these lands, airs, and waterways, considering future generations as we make our lifestyle choices day by day. Self-realization, enlightenment is itself a lifestyle choice. And last week, as we were considering the butterfly here in this path of the intellect, we talked about the egg as being the seed of the idea, and how the egg or the seed has all things already coded into it, already contained within the essence is the end result. And this is like our samkalpa, our intention. Before you were able to join us in the video, we did a check-in. We always start these workshops with a private check-in, and that idea of intention and desired outcomes and patience in the middle was a theme for many of us. But today we'll begin with today's intention, whatever your intention may be, why you're here now, why you're watching this video, who you wish to show up as in your everyday life. And I encourage you to carry that intention into your breath. So you're feeling the energy of that intention in your thoughts, in your emotions, and bringing that intentionality, that presence through your breath. You can close your eyes or cast them downward. And simply breathe. As that intention may have an impact on the depth or the quality of the breath. You can imagine your breath intensifying and distributing your intention. Perhaps you feel more embodied as you breathe this breath. Perhaps you feel the presence of that intention with you. Inhale by inhale, exhale by exhale. Perhaps this intention begins to create itself as imagery in your mind. Symbolic or literal. And whether that intention is coming to you as an energy, an emotion, an image, or something else, begin to think of a project. This can be a project that you are involved in right now, something you just started, something you're grinding away at. But identify that project to yourself. And if this is something you have already started, call to mind that energy of beginning. Like the egg cracking open. When a butterfly hatches out of its egg, it comes out as a hungry caterpillar, eats and eats and eats. And so it must to survive, to gather the energy that is required to become a butterfly. Very, very indulgent phase. And us in our creative projects, we are also indulgent when we get started. The first day of school, new pencil case, new pens, is very different than midterms, which is full grind, learning things that we're not as interested in, losing our free time to an end result that can feel really far off. Creative projects are similar. Getting a sketch on a canvas is not the same as figuring out where the light source is and how to put in the details of shading. Here in the indulgence, let's think about the importance of nourishment. Let's think about the importance of sustenance as that which strengthens us so that we can carry through an endeavor, a creative endeavor like the project you're thinking of, or even this life's journey where we begin so young and vital and hit stages in our lives where we feel like we don't even have the energy to lie on the floor and stretch a little bit, which is where we're headed next. For some self-nourishment, just, you're welcome to stand up or sit up if you prefer, but if it works for you, just lie down and start to give yourself a good stretch across the floor. Just like when you first wake up in the morning, arms long overhead, legs reaching long out of the hip sockets. Feeling that lengthening coming from the underarms and coming through the rib cage and through the waistline, creating openness, not for the sake of openness itself. You're not trying to see how tall or long you can make your tissues, but just to give space to the places that are seeking space, to bring circulation to the places that have been too still, quiet, deadened. And then curl it all up. Bring your knees to your chest, wrap your arms around your shins or thighs. You can rock yourself from side to side a little bit on the floor, massaging, toning those spinal nerves, working tensions out of the back. And depending on where you roll yourself while you're curled up in this ball, how open or closed you are, where you distribute your weight, you can adapt that massage, make it your own, get into the spaces that want a little more contact or pressure. And then stretch it all open again, wide open, tall, hands come apart, and this time exaggerate the stretch through your right side. If you want to, you can bring your arms over to the left a little bit. You can shimmy your legs and feet over to the left, just keeping the weight even on both sides of your hips or seat. Leaning right, and then scooching over the other way and similarly stretching through the left. Sliding those arms and legs over to the right side to create more length there on the left, more breath, more openness, vitality, prana through that left side. Before you return to the center, knees back into the chest, those arms can come out to the sides in a T position. Set the soles of the feet down on the floor and windshield wiper your legs from side to side. So bringing a little bit of rotation through those lower spinal vertebrae, bit of a twisting action, and you can add the top of your twist by turning your face in the opposite direction that the knees are falling. Just going from side to side, and those knees don't have to come all the way to the ground. They can just go off a little bit off center, either way. And when you've had enough of the twisting, check in with your body. Where else do you want to go, body? What other kind of movement do you need? What other sort of stretch would feel good? And give that to yourself, giving ourselves just a bit more time for breath and movement before we collect our creative instruments, and get into that expressive phase of our time together. We're beginning our expressive phase with list making today. You can do this in the form of doodles or stick figures if you prefer. But taking our way into this activity called How to Nourish Your Creative Self, thinking of the caterpillar taking in as much sustenance as it can, we too need nourishment in our own way. List all the healthy things that you do to nourish yourself. What are your healthy self-care strategies? And don't overthink it. If you're not sure if it's healthy or not, I guess just write it down. It's probably healthy for some level of your being, if not the body or the energy, then perhaps the emotions or mind, perhaps the witness self, where even though it's cake, you are really mindful and slow about the way you eat it, cultivating that witness self. Or spirit. At worst, when we're repeating some of our not so healthy habits, we're learning about how to burn the karma of that not so healthy habit, maybe why it is not best in our lives because of the impacts that then come from our choices. But all that just for now to say, list the healthy things you do to care for yourself. Most often on people's lists, if you're strapped for ideas, tend to be get out in nature, go for a walk, read, laugh, contact a supportive being, whether that's a pet, a friend, or the divine. I don't have my tea ball with me, but I am drinking my self-care, some herbs that I picked from my land. They've all kind of blended together, but when I first got it going, you could see the little feverfew flowers. They look like little chamomiles, just little tiny, tiny daisies in the tea. Now, that's plenty of time. In the beginning, when I first see clients and ask them to come back with a healthy self-care list, they come back with two things. And they say, that's because you told me healthy. If I could do everything I care for myself, I could give you a longer list, but you said healthy. So let's play with that idea then, separate list, or just draw a little line under your doodles or what you've written so far, and make note of the not so healthy things you do to care for yourself, or maybe better phrased, to cope with stress, to cope with uncomfortable feelings, to cope with the overwhelms and demands in life. What are some not so healthy things that you do? And typically our compulsive or addictive behaviors come to mind, but there are other things that we might not think of as coping that was not so healthy that we probably also do, like picking fights, driving too quickly, procrastinating, half-assing things, if I can say that. So not so healthy ways that you cope. And this isn't a confessional, and this isn't for the point of judgment. This is just acknowledgement. When we acknowledge what is with acceptance, the Yoga Sutras, especially in chapter 1 of the sutras, talk about this at length. The Bhagavad Gita, in almost every chapter, speaks a lot about accepting what is. When we acknowledge and accept, it loses its charge. There's not so much karma built up around it. It just is. And if we prefer it to be different, we will set our action to that difference. We talked about the karma yoga path in previous videos. You can see here on this YouTube channel. But we're here in Gyan now. We're here in wisdom. And so we are acknowledging what is, like scientists, like intellectuals. And the path of Gyan, the path of wisdom to know the true self, this is our yoga. And what we're doing with it is our expressive arts, yoga and expressive arts for mental health. So look at both lists, and the habits that make you feel remorseful, uncomfortable, ashamed, like you wish things were different, drop boxes around those. Give them a container, and you can depict this box however you want. For the habits that you welcome, that you wish to do more of, that you feel proud of, that is aligned with how you see yourself, who you want to be, and your intentions and efforts, draw happy shapes around those. These can be doodles, they can just be little clouds or sunshines, geometrics, whatever you want. But we're making containers for both of these. And the containers for the unwanted habits you can take to heart the next time you feel compelled to engage in that habit. You can remember that it is a container and you have time and space to make a choice. And if you choose it, hopefully that container also contains the remorse, the self-abuse that goes into us making choices that we're not as proud of. And the happy shapes, may those magnetize those habits. May those happy shapes invite more of the same. May we continue to care for ourselves in ways that we feel comfortable with, in ways that are harmonized with our self-realization path. We're going to take this onto a fresh sheet of paper. And this paper, you can fold it in half or draw 2 columns. But what's going to happen is the strategies that you could do with less of, that you're not wishing to have a lot of in your life, put them on one side. And the ones that you drew the happy shapes around, that you welcome, that you're pleased with, that you've put a lot of effort towards cultivating, draw those in the other column. Wanted on one side and unwanted on the other side. And now here's where the creativity comes in. We're asking for some lateral thinking. But notice, so underneath those columns or making notes in and around the columns, make note of what is similar about the wanted and unwanted habits. Where is there overlap? In what ways are they somehow bringing the same thing to your life? An easy example might be smoking and deep breathing, because even though the deep breath of a cigarette within contain, so commercial cigarette, I know there's other things that people smoke, and some of them even bring health, like mullein. In tradition, smoking mullein brings health to the lungs, but that's not a commercial cigarette. So in come the toxins. But taking 10 minutes for that break and doing deep breathing, that's probably in harmony with your values, giving yourself time and space to process, to review, to project forth, and to fill and release the lungs. Let the lungs do their job of exchanging gases, distributing whatever it is we're breathing into the cells. Well, when it's oxygen, that's something we want to do. So smoking, an easy example, but play with that in this activity here. Now we're on page 134 of the activity. Some other ideas are how might going for a walk be like consuming alcohol? How might picking fights with loved ones be similar to calling our loved ones? And it is a creative thought process, but it's worth contemplating. Where is there overlap between the wanted and unwanted habits? So as people on the Gion path, on the path of contemplation, science, we are massaging the data. Is that what massaging the data is? I don't think so. We're analyzing the data like scientists, and then scientists will start to draw conclusions from their observations. So what conclusions about your need for sustenance, about your nourishment, can you draw from this expressive practice? So for example, our unhealthy habits give us a clue of what is missing from our lives. Can you draw any conclusions, now that you've played with these ideas a little bit, about what you might need more of? What sustenance is deficient in your life? What kind of nourishment is your true self calling out for? And maybe it lands in something unhealthy, but the desire, the need, the cry is authentic. What might be missing? And what you can do if you're not sure, so we've been using language, but remember that imagery tends to give us clearer answers than language. That's why we apply expressive arts. Maybe dancing it, maybe singing it, or playing it on your instrument is a clearer pathway than language. So take the question, what are these unhealthy habits giving us clues to? What might be missing? And begin to express it. And when fully flummoxed, go to your non-dominant hand and let your non-dominant hand provide some answers. That non-dominant pathway gives us access where there tend to be barriers just automatically installed via the dominant pathway in the body. A second conclusion we might draw is, what healthy habits can we give more space in our lives? In acknowledging the healthy and not so healthy habits, in giving them some attention with the drawing, the boxes, the doodles, and then in looking at the columns and finding similarities. What is that teaching you about your healthy habits? What is that teaching you about where else you can bring more feel good into your life, more nourishing self-care, more sustenance? And remember that the things that do tend to nourish us most deeply are simple things. Looking out the window, petting a neighbor's dog with permission as it walks by, grabbing some greens out of your garden or your lawn and brewing them into a tea. Simple but profound nourishments. Thought it was a flower, but it was just some lemon balm. Now, take some time with this. Take some time with these conclusions. You Gion, you scientist, you thinker. What can I bring into my life to further nourish my true self, creative self, needful self? And then let's turn it into action. If we were doing a scientific write-up, we might say suggestions for future research, but this is a suggestion for a more enlightened life, for a life more harmonized with who we truly are. Caterpillar hatches from the egg and immediately goes to nourishment, building strength. And we ourselves, complex beings, we nourish ourselves with things, certainly, but we do poison ourselves with things as well. And we accept that, and we learn from that, and we let those karmas burn as much as we can. Reviewing your observations and conclusions from today's activity. What is one small, simple action that you can take in the direction of nourishment, self-care, of being who you truly are? And as you identify this one small, simple action or activity, do something creative with it. You can give this its own fresh page. Maybe you're just writing it as a contract or a commitment for yourself. Maybe you write it as a mantra, as an affirmation. Maybe you draw yourself engaging in this small, simple action, or maybe you draw what it calls to mind, the feelings that it brings to you, representing that with color, with movement across the page. So we're nourishing this small, simple action itself by giving it some creative attention and intention right now. We say small and simple because that simplicity also acts like a magnet. When we make things too complex, over-involved, challenging, although challenges do help build our character, life gives us plenty of challenges. With our self-care, let's go for simplicity. Let's allow that to magnetize. Let's draw to us the pure goodness of that intention and that intentional act. This is the niyama of tapas, of discipline, and all the niyamas are included here. Saucha, which is the quest for that balance and purity. Santosha, which is the contentment, the non-judgment that we spoke of earlier, allowing what is to be, being content with that, which doesn't mean complacency, right? Contentment is certainly different from complacency. Svadhyaya, self-study, learning more about ourselves. This whole activity has been Svadhyaya, self-study, learning about ourselves in the context of ancient wisdom. And Ishvara Pranidhan, surrendering to that higher wisdom. We don't know all things that are at play at all times. We only know our own lives and our own perspectives, and even that's pretty limited. Ishvara Pranidhan reminds us to surrender that need to know everything and trust. So here we are, giving energy to this one small, simple action as part of our cultivation of health and balance, contentment, discipline, study, surrender. And for those who are with us live right now, there's the opportunity to share on camera. Our expressive activities are so unique and personalized. This is one of the ways we can take heart that the end result doesn't really matter. The truth is, if this expression doesn't happen, if you don't perform this creative act, then that creative outcome will never exist. Only you can create what only you would create. You are unique. You are important. You are the only you who has ever existed or ever will. And what comes out of you is vital. We do, when we're early in the process of learning expressive arts, we do tend to judge ourselves and our outputs. So that's one of the reasons that the sharing on camera is nice, that we can see, oh, okay, yes, there are actually professional artists in our group, and they're going to come out with different stuff than those of us using our non-dominant hands, or those of us who have plenty of aptitudes, but not those kind. We come out with different expressions, and that's okay. It is the act of expression. It is the wisdom reflected back to us from that expression that is what makes expressive arts so valuable for our mental health. So as we've been talking about this yogic path of Gyan, of wisdom and science today, for the purpose of knowing our true selves, I turn it over to anyone in the group who wishes to share what they've come up with. And here comes Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, so what came to me is something actually that it comes to mind every now and then, and this just really brought it to the forefront. Like, I've lost my meditation practice ever since I got our dog, and I'm like, okay, well, she's 2.5 years old now, so you can try and build this into the morning space that she dominated for all of that time. And so I've been like trying to like intellectualize, well, when can I fit it in rather than just doing it, right? So I really missed that. And then the talking of the burning of the karma kind of drew me to this drawing where this is a movement through the chakras with the breath through like Nadi Shodhana, which I really miss that practice. And so it can seem very like non-cohesive, but yet you can sort of smooth with the breathing practice, the breath coming up through the spinal column. It helps to soothe and just harmonize my being. That's my story.
Great reminder for us all. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, and anyone seeing that can see how it's the art, it's the expression that taught us that, right? That's smooth. We all saw that.
Hi.
Hi, Kate.
So mine's really different. That was so joyful, Karen. Thank you. Wow. So I just stayed on the same page the whole time, and I just did a lot of lettering. But at the top, I wrote yoga, because that's just that every time I start thinking I'm just going to go get a job, I'm not going to do the yoga, something pulls me right back in. It's like, no, that's not you know what I mean? So this is number one all the time, and then everything from yoga just kind of comes in. Someone else mentioned it earlier. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of things that I feel like I wanted to do all my life when I was little, and now that I'm in the end part of my life, I'm doing those things again. So it's really wonderful. I'm planting a garden finally, and so I'm really excited about that. So thank you for this. This was really beautiful.
Thank you so much, Kate. Absolutely. We resonate so much with each other, don't we? Yeah. Okay, well, please do feel welcome to share your expressions in the Yoga for the Creative Soul or weekly Wednesday workshops with Erin group on Facebook. The links to our weekly meetings are in the comments below, as well as my contact information if you have any questions or comments. I am bringing more of this yoga and expressive arts for mental health live and in person to Stratford, New Hampshire, May 13th and 14th, 2023. So if you want to play in real life, there'll be a group of us getting together and doing that in a couple of months. But as always, we'll be here Wednesdays, 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern. All are welcome at any time. And I look forward to seeing you here then, and on Facebook as well, as we share our insights, expressions, and inspiration. Thank you, everybody.